All right, everybody. We've got two very special guests for y'all this week. Everybody, please welcome to the show Katherine Blakeney and Alex Sapountzis. Welcome.
Hey,
Hey.
good to have him.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We're huge fans of Wayward Raven and all the fun stuff that you guys have been doing over the last it's been quite a few years now that I think Alex has been on the show.
This was much darker when we started.
Yeah.
I think both Mark and I had hair up here when we started.
Yeah.
I was trying to think back on when we first met you guys, and we've said it every time you're on the show, but the whole introduction was like, we have free beer, and Mike and me are just like, yeah, cool, let's do it.
Let's stop by the booth and
was it a Philly show? I think it was a Philly show, right?
I think it was either a New York or Connecticut show.
Connecticut, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's been a lot of comics since then. And then Katherine, you've never been on the show before. You're certainly a senior name involved in some stuff. So why don't you just give us a little background and how you got involved in comics?
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me here.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Actually, the Napoleon Starship, which we're going to be talking about later, is my first graphic novel.
Oh, okay.
I actually came into comics from animation.
Oh, okay.
I'm a stop motion animator and also a film historian. And I'm actually in Egypt right now because I am also an archaeologist.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
A little layered. My mom is an archaeologist, and she's the director of an archaeological expedition here in Egypt. And I've been working with her ever since I was 9 years old.
Wow.
So I grew up around a lot of museums and digs, and art is my life.
Yeah,
and,
wow.
The first, if you think about it, really the first comic books were actually written by the ancient Egyptians.
Yeah, like pictograms and hieroglyphics and things, right?
And if you just look at the walls, just the relief carvings on the walls, they tell stories, and they have speech bubbles, and you've got like a baboon stealing fruit from the market and people yelling, "Catch that thief!" Like literally they have that on the walls. So I was really exposed to comic books, ancient comic books, from a very, very young age. And then I got into animation, and sort of it went from there. And then I thought, well, why not actually turn one of my animation storyboards into a graphic novel?
That's cool. Amazing. That's the first origin story. I mean, you have like the Dr. Fate origin story of like discovered an ancient Egyptian relic, but no, it like inspired you to create art yourself. But that's really interesting, the way you translated the two. I never thought about it that way, that they were the original comics. That's really cool. Yeah.
And you left out one thing from your repertoire. You're also a pilot?
Yes, I am.
Oh. So you are the Indiana Jones. You should be wearing the hat, and everything. Dude, that's amazing.
That's how we pitch her book. Yeah. It's like either Lara Croft or Indiana Jones. One of the
two. Actually, my mom is Indiana Jones. I'm the daughter of Indiana Jones.
Okay, the daughter of Indiana.
So you're Shia LaBeouf?
No.
Thanks,
you don't want to be Shia LaBeouf.
No, that did not happen.
No.
That film does not exist.
Yeah, we don't talk about that one.
No, we don't talk about that.
So now I want the next Indiana Jones to be Indiana Jones in the Action Comics #1.
Yeah. So that's the thing I can get behind. Ancient Aliens, seems like bullshit to me, but the Egyptians created comic books. Now that I understand. That one makes a lot of sense to me. That's really interesting. So how did you and Alex start working together? Because you said this was a storyboard that you had originally.
I was, I just thought this would make a fun graphic novel. Like that format would just really work for this story. And I started, looking around at, so how do people actually publish graphic novels? Mm-hmm. And I've been going to New York Comic Con for years. I love comics. I love graphic novels. So it's something that I was into already. And I started coming up to publishers just at New York Comic Con and saying, I have this cool idea. What do you think? And I saw the Wayward Raven table, and they looked like really fun guys, and they had some really interesting covers, and they were working on a lot of historical, mythological inspired stories, and I just really clicked with their style and the types of stories that they wanted to tell, and I started telling them about my weird Napoleon attacks ancient aliens stories and showing them drawings of my B-shaped starship, and I'd be, you want to go to space with me? And they were nice enough to actually hear me out and not, call security or, 911. And they said, send us what you have. And I had actually 23 pages at that point, and about 5 of them were colored.
Wow.
And I just sent them everything I had, and then we signed a contract.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a very happy coincidence, considering like a lot of our stuff does have a mythological basis. I don't know if I think Mark has mentioned that he did also want to be Indiana Jones when he grew up.
Okay.
But like he studied a bit of the classics, and he did intend to go into archaeology before going into English lit. And even for me, I grew up going to Greece since I was a kid. So for me, like I would just go walk in the ruins, and there'd be modern and ancient graffiti too. So for me, like the whole mythology thing, history aspect really resonated. And the interesting thing is we actually published the preview of her story in We Suck at Comics Volume 1. So now if you back the project, or if you're a fan of her work from this book, you'll get the full story, once it's out.
That's awesome. I know Chris we were talking about We Suck at Comics before the recording, so that's a cool thing that you got to show the book off.
No, she said Volume 1, everybody.
Yeah, Volume 1. Yeah, meaning there might be some more volumes in the future. But let's talk about the Kickstarter. So Chris will have it pulled up here, but you have on the site here Les Mis meets Star Wars. So what's that all about? Can you give us the plot synopsis of Napoleon Starship?
Sure. Well, it's about Napoleon, who has finished conquering all of planet Earth, and he's decided to conquer the stars as well. He wants to become basically an evil galactic emperor. So that's where the Star Wars aspect comes in. And a young rebel called Gavroche, only my version is a female. Gavroche, of course, he's male in Les Miserables. She stows away aboard Napoleon's starship because she wants to assassinate him to stop his basically galactic takeover. And she fails. This isn't a huge spoiler. This basically happens on page 3.
Okay, great.
And she ends up flying off into space with Napoleon on his starship to a distant planet called Thror. And she meets the locals, basically Florians, and she sees all the horrible damage that Napoleon is doing there, and she joins the Florian rebels, and they fight back against Napoleon and try to stop him from plundering ancient Florian treasures, just like he did on Earth in Egypt and in a lot of other countries.
That's obviously the next step. If nobody ever stopped him, right, he takes to space.
Yeah. So this is what would happen if nobody stopped Napoleon. He would build a starship and go to space.
Yeah. Go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, thankfully, he was smart enough to try to fight the Russians in the cold.
Yeah. He was thwarted.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where did the
like every great evil leader before him?
Yes.
Yeah. Where did the idea for the spaceship come from?
It was actually inspired by Napoleon's fascination with bees.
Oh, I had no idea. Okay.
He was really into bee symbolism. Bees were one of his major symbols that he chose for himself because they're industrious and they create beautiful things. They create beehives and they work as a team to, sort of create a new universe. They're like an empire. So he sort of identified with a queen bee. Okay. And I thought, if he built a starship, it would be shaped like a bee. And if you take a close look at Napoleon's famous coronation portrait, if you look at his coronation robes, there are actually tiny golden bees embroidered all over his robes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and I just made them giant.
So I'm learning something because I mean, I just never really paid attention too much to history class or social studies. That's just how I'm a math and science person. That's just what I got good grades in. But for me, I'm actually learning something while I'm reading the book about space. So that's awesome. I had no idea, but that's really cool that you're involving a lot of the historical facts into your sci-fi comic, right? So is there a lot of opportunities for that with the story?
Definitely. I love history, various historical periods, and sort of. Oh yeah, there you go. Yeah, the little golden shapes that you see there. Those are not polka dots. Those are bees. You can see little bees with their wings outspread like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and he has the holy hand grenade of Antioch.
Yeah, the holy hand grenade is there too as well.
He was strapped.
Yeah, he was strapped.
Yeah, cheers.
He's ready for the Oasis, you know.
Yep. I love the fact that the somebody came to Napoleon and he was like, no, there needs to be more bees.
More bees.
More bees. Or I won't wear it. Yeah, so like you said, I mean, you're well versed in history and things like that, and so you have opportunities to add that to the story.
Definitely. I love history. I love art history as well. I spent a massive chunk of my childhood in museums all over the world. My mom, who's an archaeologist, she worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York for 13 years.
Wow.
And I basically grew up there. I spent all my time after school just wandering around the galleries. And I developed a very personal relationship with art, not just as something, smart and beautiful that you need to understand and appreciate. It was mine. I had my favorite paintings, my favorite sculptures, and I just had, a child's perception of them and a child's relationship with them. I had my favorite collection of monsters, all over the galleries. So that's something that I wanted to bring into this novel, sort of that really gritty personal relationship with history and a non-intellectual, but sort of a fandom level.
Yeah, that's cool. That's
Mike
really
likes
cool.
it when Superman punches people.
Yeah. That's. I like the punchy books. I read some other stuff too, but
I think there's some maybe not punches, but spear attacks in this book.
Oh yeah, there's quite a lot of damage that goes on in this story. There's some stabbing, bit of blood, lots of spears being hurled, some poison darts. Very violent trees.
Trees. Okay.
The trees don't just walk in this one; they fight.
Oh, all right.
So you're saying it's better than Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, of course. That's, that's a whole series about walking.
Yeah, they really do walk.
That's why we're friends.
There's definitely more accidents.
Yeah.
On a serious note, too, like as a fellow artist, when I was looking through like some of the early submissions that Katherine was doing, I was blown away by like how detailed some of the scenes were, and just the way everything moved, and her use of color was amazing. So if you look at a lot of the book, it's like every page is a painting. And I can see that eye she had for art from the gallery. It's like it pops out.
It's funny you say that because that's what, like, as I'm going through the pages, what I'm looking at, like, it does look like it has a painted style, but not in the way that like we as comic people think of like an Alex Ross. Yeah. But more of like like Katherine said, like a painting, an art painting has a different style. And I really liked, like, this page in particular is really cool with some of the stuff going on throughout it. But there's one.
I love that one.
Yeah.
It's very epic. Where is it? This one was my favorite because you have multiple styles going on, and I can see like the French Revolution art style going on in the background too. At least from my dumb knowledge of it.
The cool thing is, with the Kickstarter, some of the reward tiers, we will be giving prints of these, so that is an option. And in fact, there's some very special limited time only reduced quantity rewards that Katherine is actually going to be working on in Egypt for people. So you want to tell them about that, Katherine?
Yeah, they are called adorned prints, and they're inspired by an 18th century technique, which is quite period appropriate. This novel is actually set in 1805, so it's very close in time. Yeah. And so it was this technique in the 18th century where they took actual prints, and instead of coloring them in, they would cut out all the inside shapes and fill them in with fabric or lace, velvet, leather, just all these different materials. And I started playing around with that because I thought it was such a great idea. And I did this one. You can see I'm using sequins there and a bit of leather and candy wrappers and beads and just, everything that worked for that image. And I really enjoyed doing that. And it really works for the style of Napoleon Starship as well. So I'm making some limited edition prints inspired by Napoleon Starship. And I've actually hauled out a stack of prints and bags of fabric and beads and leather and different materials that I'm going to be using to make these prints on demand. And they're going to be inevitably mixed in with a bit of Egyptian sand because everything in Egypt is covered in sand, including me right now at this moment.
Is it coarse and get everywhere?
Yes.
Yes. And I do, in fact, dislike it strongly. Not but yes.
Love
it. So, yes.
That's really cool.
So you can have some of that wonderful coarse sand that will get everywhere.
Yep.
It's a bonus to the prints.
Yeah, like you're doing like buttons and everything here, but if we go back up, there was the prints that we talked about for some of those pages. 3 prints right there. This one on the right is probably my favorite. That one, it's really cool.
Yeah.
The one in the middle is out of all of the prints and pieces of the book, it is probably my top print, just because of how like organic it looks and just the colors.
Yeah. It's cool how you combine so many different styles. I feel like just being one artist, but you combine it all in the book where it's like I've never really seen a lot like that in the comic books space. So that's really cool how you do that.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun experimenting here, and I really wanted to have that sense of sort of a lot of different styles clashing because there's Napoleon and his world and his invading army, and they're coming to take over this completely unknown and unfamiliar planet, and it looks very different from anything that any of them have ever seen. And then there's this other layer, this ancient hidden civilization underground, which also looks different from the way that the planet looks today on the surface. So I wanted to bring in all of these different references. And again, for the Napoleon segment, I was looking at a lot of paintings from the late 1700s, the early 1800s, and looking at the way that they used color and brush strokes and composition and sort of incorporate that feeling. And then for the ancient Florian civilization, I was looking at, of course, Egypt, but also I was looking at ancient Greece. I was looking at Minoan art, Syrian art, so really references from all over the world, some of my favorite art references and some of the places that I've traveled to. Just wanted to bring that all in there and make it come together.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
Alex, for you guys over there, like, you did the We Suck at Comics anthology, and I know when we talked about that, what was that, a year ago now?
About, I think, yeah. Maybe more.
That you guys were really getting into like publishing other people's stuff and thinking more about that. This seems to be the natural next step. What has gone into that for you guys, and why have you chosen to take this path as opposed to keep publishing your own stuff?
Well, I mean, we're still doing our own stuff, but like you said, this was a natural progression. Like we, and it kind of dovetails into the name We Suck at Comics. We've been doing this for a while, and we always felt like we recognize how hard it is for an individual creator to get to get noticed. It's like, I think Mark and I, we have this joke, we're just basically screaming into the void. And we're not the only ones who feel that. I know, Catherine, you said this is your first book. So you're basically where we were when we started, and a lot of the other people in We Suck at Comics were in that same point. So for us, it was like we had tried doing little one-offs. Before Catherine, we had another young man whose book we published as well. So it just kind of made sense, to get together and just help make a unified front for indie comics, because I mean, like on a personal level, like the reason I got into this is just so I can make comics with my friends. I mean, I've been doing that since grade school. Like me at the lunch table, we'd be sitting there drawing Spider-Man together, you know, and then we made our own characters and stuff like in between, you know, all of our classes growing up as well. So like, yeah, this just made sense to us. It's like, let's do this together.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And I had to say, Catherine, like as I'm going through the Kickstarter page these past couple of days, and we've talked a lot about Egypt, but it's just so fascinating. And you have some pictures up on there as well of you and the team working over there. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, that's those guys that you see up there. Yeah, those are our Egyptian team. They are conservators. They're working with us to restore ancient underground tombs. That tomb that we're standing in, that's the tomb of Karkamoon, and the ceiling completely caved in, bringing down the walls and the pillars. And we've been rebuilding it practically from scratch for almost 20 years now, and I grew up with these guys. They're like my brothers. I've known them ever since, you know, I was really little, and they were teenagers. And they started out working with our team, and now they're all, you know, grown-up guys with families of their own and big careers in archaeology. So it's really exciting. It's really a family project.
So you guys are working together to like rebuild this tomb and put all these hieroglyphics back up.
Yes.
Why isn't this on a show on HGTV?
Like, yeah, I would watch that. I would for sure.
Like Tomb Raider renovation.
All right, we need to talk to some people.
I like that.
We've got hundreds of thousands of fragments that are just lying on the ground, and we're rebuilding, you know, ancient images and ancient inscriptions, and we're trying to get into the minds of these ancient builders who created this tomb and understanding how they saw proportions, what sort of inscriptions did they want on their walls, you know, how did they write them? You know, we're finding, you know, all of these texts, let's say, that are common in a lot of different tombs, but they're done differently in this tomb. What does that mean? What does that say about the tomb owner? What did he want to tell us? That they're sending us messages. Again, this entire tomb is a monumental comic book. It's a story with pictures.
Yeah, right.
So, and we get to read all of these stories.
How old is that particular tomb?
How old is the tomb, recommend? Sorry, my mom's sitting right there.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. She can tell.
Fact check.
About 3 millennia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's real. Wow.
I'm going to make sure I get the facts straight.
Yeah.
That's
amazing. I know you said it's one large comic book, but I know if somebody chopped up a bunch of comic books and I had to tape them all together, I'd still be pretty awful at it. It's
just that would be like if they shredded it all up, Mike, and you had to like a jigsaw puzzle, put it back together, and still make the story make sense.
Yeah, that's tough.
And imagine if it's a really old comic book. And there are no copies of that particular issue.
Right. Yeah, to go from. Yeah, exactly. So it's even harder.
In other issues. And you're trying to use those references to piece this one back together.
Lovely. Yeah, that's awful. Oh my God. I couldn't do it. I'm not cut out for it. So yeah, let's talk about the Kickstarter. You have about 20 days to go, a little more than 20 days. Almost halfway to the goal. 4,200. Yeah. Almost 50% of the way there. You have the digital rewards, you have the hardcover, you also have the We Suck at Comics available. You talked about the previews in the volume 1 there. Is there anything else you want to talk about rewards wise or any stretch goals wise before we wrap up today for the people that'll back this project?
Well, we I think like you mentioned, for the physical edition, it will be a hardcover. We saw how beautiful that looked for We Suck. So we're definitely doing this as a hardcover from the jump.
Yep.
We're hoping to, when we hit that goal, there's some stretch goals we've got in our back pocket that we're also going to be very excited to present once we get to that point. But
cool.
Yeah, awesome. There's and the big highlight was the original piece from Catherine.
Yeah.
But the stickers and pins and all the add-ons, those are things we really want people to look at as well. Yeah.
How many pages is it?
I think total the book is going to be like 74 pages with because we also got some behind the scenes things, like the story itself was like, what was it,
64
pages.
Exactly 64 pages.
Yeah, exactly. And then since we got to do multiples of 4 because of printing, I threw in like a whole bio about Katherine, her creative process, because it's cool. Catherine's got an interesting story, and we want to share that as well.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's definitely our first archaeologist, Katherine. So
yes,
yeah.
I'm glad to hear it.
I wanted to shout out because you mentioned on the page like, printing's expensive and all that stuff. But I was looking at pricing and I'm like, first off, if you're a digital reader like Mike here, $15 for a full graphic novel, pretty damn good.
Yeah.
25 for wait, that's the early bird. 30 for both We Suck at Comics and this. Also pretty damn good. And then honestly, it being a hardcover and everything, it's a $35 pledge tier for the hardcover. That's not really a bad price. Like,
no, it's not.
We try to be fair with our pricing. So,
yeah. So I thought the pricing for everything was pretty good, and people are definitely get their money's worth with everything. And you got a lot of cool add-ons and stuff that you're doing with the stickers, the prints, and all that we talked about earlier. So there's a lot of cool stuff out there for everybody.
Yeah, the plan is once we, I think you get a bunch of stickers and pins depending on the reward level, and then if we can hit that stretch goal, we're going to be throwing on a bunch of more stuff in there too. Stuff that I really can't wait to share. So, yeah.
Awesome. Looking
Very
forward
cool.
to it. Great. So, yeah, before we wrap up today, for our listeners and our viewers, we'll have the links and stuff Chris will talk about. But Katherine, if our viewers or listeners want to follow you, do you want to, shout out to a social media or something?
Sure. Yep. I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I also have a blog on my website, and I am going to be posting almost every day while the campaign is running and sharing some behind-the-scenes details and little sort of snippets of backstory about Planet Thror and its civilization and all the different inspirations that went into creating this story and its imagery. So if you're interested in that, please check it out.
Yeah, actually, for backers too, when we post our updates, we've included some videos of some behind the scenes processes of Katherine. Like when she mentioned she was a stop motion animator, like she legit made her characters as posable figures so that she can use them as reference. That was such a cool thing. We wanted to include it in the Kickstarter video, but we had to cut it down to a certain point, so we just released that whole piece as a update. So if you back really our project, you will see that too.
That's awesome.
I actually sewed all the costumes by hand and everything, just so I'd have references for my drawings. So I'd know what ancient Thorians looked like.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was like, and I think it was like this big, was it? Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing.
That was a lot of fun.
That is nuts. It's the second update, everybody. If you go to the Kickstarter,
if you want to see the updates,
just looking at it. And Alex, how about you? I mean, social media. I know it's a terrible place to be, but where are you?
I know. It's you pretty much can find us on Facebook and Instagram as Wayward Raven Media. We're on Twitter as Wayward Raven, and we just dropped a TikTok now, so that's Wayward Raven. Yeah. We finally, we're finally making it a less cool place by being the old folks on there. You can find all of our stuff at waywardraven.com if you still use a regular ass browser. And you can find me at ASAP Can Draw, where I just post doodles. So,
cool.
And to everybody out there watching and or listening, as always, check the show notes down below. I'll have all those links to the Kickstarter page, to Wayward's website, to Katherine's website, all that, so you can click on them and check them out. But make sure you check out the Kickstarter page first.
Yes, please.
Katherine, Alex, thanks so much for dropping by and talking. And best of luck with the campaign.
Yeah, thanks.
Fingers crossed. Really hoping.